December 1968, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, somewhere over Laos at 12,000 feet. A lumbering C-130 cargo plane banks into a slow left turn, circling like a vulture above the jungle canopy. Inside, Captain John Levitow peers through the darkness at the infrared screen, showing 47 North Vietnamese trucks moving supplies south. The enemy believes they're invisible under triple canopy jungle and total darkness. They're wrong. This wasn't supposed to work. Senior Air Force commanders called it Project Gunship 2, a desperate experiment to turn slow cargo planes into attack aircraft. Suicide, one general declared. You're putting crews in flying coffins. The C-130 could barely reach 300 miles per hour, had zero armor, and was designed to haul cargo, not fight wars. But someone forgot to tell the North Vietnamese. As Levitow's crew opened fire with side-mounted cannons, those 47 trucks became 47 pillars of flame in under 3 minutes. No warning, no escape, just devastating precision firepower raining from the darkness. If you want to discover how the military's biggest mistake became the weapon that changed modern warfare, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which aircraft story you want next. Let's dive into the legend of Spectre.
The concept that would eventually become the AC-130 Spectre gunship originated not from careful Pentagon planning, but from sheer desperation. By late 1967, American forces in Vietnam faced an impossible logistics problem. North Vietnamese supply convoys traveled the Ho Chi Minh Trail under cover of darkness, moving thousands of tons of weapons and ammunition south through Laos and Cambodia. Traditional air interdiction had failed spectacularly. Fast-moving fighters like the F-4 Phantom could destroy individual trucks, but they screamed past their targets at 500 miles per hour, making precision strikes nearly impossible in darkness. By the time pilots identified targets, acquired firing solutions, and delivered weapons, they'd already overflown the impact zone. Lieutenant Colonel John C. Meyer proposed what seemed like an insane solution during an October briefing at Tan Son Nhut Air Base. Take a C-130 Hercules cargo plane, mount cannons firing out the left side, and have the aircraft fly in a constant left-hand orbit above enemy convoys. The pilot would bank the plane at precisely the right angle so the cannons pointed directly at targets below. Gunners could then fire continuously while the aircraft circled, creating a cone of destruction that could obliterate everything within the orbit radius. The Pentagon's response was immediate and brutal. Absolutely not, declared Air Force Chief of Staff General John McConnell during an emergency review meeting. The C-130 has a maximum speed of 320 knots. Its ceiling barely reaches 23,000 feet with full combat load. You're proposing to put it in sustained orbit over enemy air anti-aircraft positions where it will present a slow-moving target for 30 minutes at a time. This isn't tactical innovation, it's assisted suicide. McConnell's objections carried significant weight. The C-130 had been designed as a tactical transport aircraft, featuring high wings, 4 turboprop engines, and a cavernous cargo bay optimized for hauling troops and equipment. Its defensive capabilities consisted exactly of nothing. No armor plating, no defensive gun positions, no electronic countermeasures. The aircraft's survival depended entirely on staying away from combat zones, not orbiting directly above them. But Meyer had studied the tactical problem from every angle. Fast movers couldn't loiter over target areas. Helicopters lacked sufficient altitude, speed, and firepower. B-52 strikes provided devastating carpet bombing, but couldn't distinguish individual vehicles or provide close air support without risking friendly casualties. The only solution required an aircraft that could orbit targets for extended periods while delivering precision firepower. The C-130's 2,360-mile range and 8-hour endurance made it the only platform capable of meeting these requirements. The breakthrough came from studying Air Force history that most officers had forgotten. During World War II in Korea, transport aircraft had occasionally mounted weapons for self-defense. More significantly, the concept of pylon turns, banking an aircraft so its weapons pointed at ground targets, had been proven effective during early gunship experiments with modified C-47 Dakotas. These primitive gunships had achieved surprising success in limited test scenarios, though their light armament and vulnerable airframes had prevented widespread deployment. Meyer proposed building on these historical precedents with modern technology. The AC-130 would carry night vision sensors, infrared targeting pods, and side-mounted cannons that could fire thousands of rounds per minute. More critically, the aircraft would operate at altitudes above effective range of most anti-aircraft weapons while using darkness and electronic countermeasures to avoid detection. The proposal reached President Lyndon Johnson's desk in November 1967, accompanied by urgent requests from ground commanders in Vietnam who desperately needed better interdiction capability. Johnson, facing mounting casualties and political pressure to show progress in the war, overruled Pentagon objections and authorized Project Gunship 2 with a directive to deploy operational aircraft within 6 months. Lockheed's Skunk Works division received the contract in December, facing an impossible timeline to convert standard C-130 transports into combat gunships. Engineers had to solve unprecedented technical challenges. How do you mount heavy cannons in an aircraft designed for cargo? How do you manage recoil forces that could tear the fuselage apart? How do you aim weapons while the entire aircraft banks at 30-degree angles while shells from 4 different weapon systems hammer through the fuselage at rates exceeding 10,000 rounds per minute? But during initial test firings at Eglin Air Force Base, the concept's devastating potential became immediately apparent. Spectre could maintain sustained fire on target areas measuring 50 yards in diameter, placing rounds with accuracy measured in single-digit meters. The weapon's combined firepower could transform trucks, bunkers, and buildings into scrap metal within seconds. More importantly, the aircraft could loiter over combat zones for hours, providing continuous fire support that no other platform could match.
Spectre's first combat deployment to Ubon Royal Thai Air Force Base in September 1968 came with explicit warnings from theater commanders. The aircraft would operate under strict limitations designed to minimize exposure to enemy air defenses. Missions would occur only in areas with confirmed low anti-aircraft threat levels. Aircraft would maintain altitudes above 10,000 feet, the theoretical maximum effective range of the most common North Vietnamese weapons. Crews would abort immediately if they encountered tracer fire or radar illumination. These restrictions lasted exactly 3 missions before operational reality demanded their abandonment. Ground forces engaged in firefights couldn't wait for ideal conditions or threat assessments. They needed fire support immediately, regardless of enemy air defense posture. Spectre crews found themselves orbiting at 8,000 feet, then 6,000 feet, then whatever altitude provided clear sensor readings of targets below. Captain John Levito's crew received their combat baptism on the night of October 12th during an emergency close air support mission near Khe Sanh. A Marine rifle company had been pinned down by North Vietnamese forces, occupying fortified positions on 3 sides of their perimeter. Fast movers had attempted strikes but couldn't distinguish friend from foe in the darkness. The Marines needed precision fire that could eliminate enemy positions within 100 yards of friendly troops. Levito's sensor operator, Technical Sergeant Michael Thornton, had spent weeks mastering the gunship's targeting systems. The infrared sensors showed heat signatures from human bodies, vehicle engines, and weapon muzzle flashes. The Starlight scope amplified ambient light thousands of times, revealing details invisible to naked eye observation. Most critically, the fire control computer could calculate precise aim points, accounting for every variable affecting ballistic trajectory. The engagement began at 11:47 p.m., with Levito establishing a left-hand orbit at 7,500 feet above the Marine position. Thornton's sensors immediately identified 14 distinct heat signatures in the enemy positions, including what appeared to be crew-served weapons and ammunition stores. The fire control solution required 2.3 seconds to calculate, accounting for aircraft speed of 280 knots, bank angle of 28 degrees, crosswind velocity of 12 knots, and target elevation. When the miniguns opened fire, the effect was biblical. 6,000 rounds per minute transformed into streams of red tracers that appeared to connect aircraft and ground in solid lines of fire. The 20mm Vulcan cannons added explosive projectiles that detonated on impact, creating secondary explosions as enemy ammunition cooked off. Within 30 seconds, all 14 heat signatures had disappeared, replaced by thermal blooms of burning material and superheated earth. The Marine Company commander's radio transmission said everything about Spectre's impact. "Jesus Christ, what the hell was that? You just saved 47 lives." But the mission revealed vulnerabilities that Pentagon critics had predicted.
As Levitot maintained his orbit, North Vietnamese anti-aircraft crews opened fire with 12.7mm heavy machine guns. Tracers arced toward the gunship from multiple positions, and several rounds struck the aircraft's fuselage. The C-130's lack of armor meant that any hit could prove catastrophic if it struck critical systems or crew members. Levitot responded with tactics that would become standard Spectre procedure. Instead of fleeing the engagement area, he directed fire toward the anti-aircraft positions themselves, using the weapon's devastating volume of fire to suppress enemy air defenses. The strategy worked because North Vietnamese gunners couldn't maintain accurate fire while taking incoming rounds from 4 different weapon systems. This engagement established the tactical doctrine that defined AC-130 operations for the next 50 years. The aircraft's vulnerability to ground fire was real, but manageable if crews used their overwhelming firepower to destroy threats before those threats could achieve effective fire. The key was identifying anti-aircraft positions quickly and eliminating them with prejudice before they could organize concentrated fire. Throughout October and November 1968, Spectre gunships flew increasingly aggressive missions over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Intelligence estimates suggested North Vietnamese logistics operations moved between 800 and 1,200 trucks south each week, carrying weapons, ammunition, and supplies that sustained enemy operations throughout South Vietnam. Interdiction of these supply lines became the primary mission justification for continuing gunship operations, despite mounting concerns about aircraft losses. The statistics that emerged from these early missions stunned Pentagon analysts. Individual AC-130 sorties were destroying 10, 15, sometimes 20 trucks per mission during 4-hour patrols. The aircraft could identify convoy movements through jungle canopy using infrared sensors, track individual vehicles as they attempted evasive maneuvers, and systematically eliminate entire convoys without survivors or escapees. North Vietnamese commanders quickly recognized they faced a new threat, unlike anything encountered previously. Convoy drivers reported attacks by invisible aircraft that struck without warning, their positions somehow detected despite heavy vegetation and total darkness. Entire truck columns would be engulfed in explosions within minutes, their cargo and vehicles transformed into burning wreckage before drivers could even identify the direction of attack. The psychological impact proved as significant as physical destruction. Drivers began refusing to move during hours when Spectre gunships were known to operate. Convoys that previously traveled at night to avoid daytime airstrikes now faced the choice between vulnerability to fast movers during daylight or annihilation by orbiting gunships after sunset. Neither option offered acceptable survival odds. By December 1968, intelligence assessments indicated that North Vietnamese logistics operations along certain sections of the trail had declined by over 60%. The enemy was adapting tactics, dispersing supply operations, and investing heavily in anti-aircraft defenses specifically designed to counter the AC-130 threat. These adaptations confirmed what Spectre crews already knew. Their weapons system had become strategically significant.
The winter of 1968-69 brought escalation in the air war over Laos, as North Vietnamese forces deployed increasingly sophisticated anti-aircraft systems along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Intelligence reports identified 37mm and 57mm radar-guided cannons, weapons capable of engaging targets at altitudes up to 15,000 feet with devastating accuracy. These systems represented serious threats to slow-moving gunships that required sustained orbits over target areas. Major Ed Holcomb's crew aboard Spectre 11 encountered this new reality on the night of January 28th during routine interdiction patrol over Steel Tiger, the operational area covering southern Laos. His sensor operator had identified a convoy of 23 trucks moving through a mountain pass, a perfect target for sustained fire. As Holcomb established his orbit at 9,000 feet and prepared to engage, his electronic warfare officer detected multiple fire control radars illuminating the aircraft. The warning came too late. A 37mm cannon shell struck Spectre 11's No. 3 engine, detonating inside the nacelle and severing hydraulic lines and fuel systems.
The engine exploded in flames while metal fragments punctured the wing fuel tanks, creating secondary fires that threatened to consume the entire wing structure. Holcomb immediately initiated emergency shutdown procedures while fighting to maintain aircraft control. The crew faced a critical decision. Standard procedure called for immediate departure from the combat area and emergency landing at the nearest friendly airfield. But abandoning the engagement meant 23 trucks would complete their supply run, delivering weapons and ammunition that would kill American soldiers within days. Holcomb made a choice that would define Spectre culture for generations. "We're completing the mission," he announced over intercom. "Fire control, prosecute those targets." For the next 12 minutes, Spectre 11 orbited over enemy positions with one engine burning, hydraulic systems failing, and fuel streaming from punctured tanks. The miniguns and cannons emptied their ammunition reserves, transforming the convoy into a 3-mile stretch of burning wreckage before Holcomb finally turned toward Ubon. They made it back with 11 minutes of fuel remaining and 2 engines operating at partial capacity. Post-flight inspection revealed 47 separate hits from anti-aircraft fire, including rounds that had passed within inches of critical flight controls and crew stations. By all logical analysis, Spectre 11 should have crashed in Laotian jungle. Yet the crew's determination to complete their mission, despite catastrophic damage, demonstrated the mentality that made AC-130 operations successful. This incident triggered immediate reassessment of gunship tactics and defensive capabilities. Engineers added limited armor plating around crew stations and critical systems, though weight restrictions prevented comprehensive protection. More significantly, aircraft began carrying advanced electronic countermeasure systems designed to jam or deceive enemy radar-guided weapons. These systems couldn't guarantee survival, but they improved odds significantly. The tactical evolution that followed emphasized the importance of threat analysis and mission planning. Crews learned to identify high-risk areas where sophisticated air defenses operated, adjusting their tactics accordingly. In heavily defended zones, Spectre would operate from higher altitudes using long-range sensors and precision weapons. In permissive environments, aircraft could descend to lower altitudes where their weapons achieved maximum effectiveness. Captain Thomas Pinkerton's crew pioneered techniques for suppressing air defenses during sustained engagements. When Spectre 04 encountered heavy anti-aircraft fire over Route 92 in February, Pinkerton directed his weapons officers to divide their attention between primary targets and air defense positions. The 20mm cannons would engage trucks while the miniguns swept suspected anti-aircraft locations with suppressive fire. The tactic proved devastatingly effective. North Vietnamese gunners couldn't maintain accurate fire while taking hundreds of rounds from aircraft circling overhead. The psychological impact of sustained incoming fire disrupted their firing solutions and forced them to seek cover rather than tracking their target. Spectre crews discovered they could dominate the tactical engagement through sheer volume and precision of fire. By March 1969, AC-130 gunships had destroyed over 800 trucks, eliminated 23 anti-aircraft positions, and prevented countless supply deliveries to enemy forces in South Vietnam. These statistics represented unprecedented success for an aircraft that Pentagon analysts had dismissed as obsolete before it ever flew combat missions. The Flying Coffin had become the most feared weapon system operating over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. North Vietnamese response demonstrated the gunship's strategic impact. Enemy forces began moving supplies exclusively during daylight hours when Spectre couldn't operate without unacceptable vulnerability to visual air defenses. Convoys traveled in smaller groups dispersed across multiple routes, reducing the concentration of targets that made gunship attacks so devastating. These adaptations confirmed that AC-130 operations had fundamentally disrupted enemy logistics operations. The aircraft's success generated demands for additional gunships and expanded operations. Ground commanders throughout South Vietnam requested Spectre support for close air support, base defense, and armed reconnaissance.
The 16th Special Operations Squadron could barely meet existing commitments, let alone satisfy the exponentially growing requests for gunship support. Pentagon planners who had opposed the program now scrambled to accelerate production and deployment. Additional C-130 aircraft received gunship conversions, and crews trained as quickly as qualification standards allowed. The weapon system that senior officers had called suicide had become the most requested air support asset in theater.
The expansion of AC-130 operations during spring 1969 revealed both the aircraft's extraordinary capabilities and its operational limitations. Additional gunships deployed to Southeast Asia faced increasing demands that pushed crews and aircraft beyond design parameters. The 16th Special Operations Squadron found itself conducting missions 7 nights per week, with individual aircraft flying multiple sorties that sometimes exceeded 10 hours total flight time. Lieutenant Colonel William Schwamm, squadron commander, recognized that sustained operations at this tempo would inevitably result in catastrophic failures. Aircraft systems required maintenance between missions, crews needed rest to maintain alertness during demanding night operations, and ammunition reserves took time to replenish. The squadron implemented strict operational schedules that limited individual aircraft to maximum 6-hour missions with mandatory 12-hour maintenance windows between flights. These limitations meant Spectre couldn't provide continuous coverage over critical areas despite command requests for 24-hour interdiction. North Vietnamese logistics officers quickly identified the gaps, scheduling convoy movements during hours when gunship coverage was absent. The cat-and-mouse game between AC-130 schedulers and enemy transportation planners became a sophisticated exercise in operational timing and deception. The introduction of AC-130E PAVE Spectre aircraft in June 1969 represented a quantum leap in capability. These upgraded gunships carried improved sensors, more sophisticated fire control systems, and most significantly, a 40mm Bofors cannon that delivered explosive projectiles capable of destroying heavily armored targets. The combination of miniguns for anti-personnel work, 20mm cannons for light vehicles, and 40mm rounds for bunkers and armor created a weapons package that could engage virtually any target. Major David Crumpler's crew aboard PAVE Spectre 01 demonstrated the enhanced capabilities during a mission over the A Shau Valley on July 3rd. His sensors detected a large enemy base complex that intelligence had been tracking for weeks. The facility included supply warehouses, ammunition bunkers, barracks, and what appeared to be a command headquarters protected by concrete fortifications. Traditional airstrikes would have required multiple fast-mover sorties, dropping hundreds of bombs with uncertain results. Crumpler's gunship eliminated the entire complex during a single 45-minute orbit. The 40mm cannons systematically destroyed hardened structures, while the 20mm weapons eliminated soft targets, and the miniguns suppressed return fire from ground forces. By the time PAVE Spectre departed the area, 17 structures had been reduced to rubble, and secondary explosions suggested substantial ammunition stores had been destroyed. Intelligence assessment the following day confirmed devastating damage. Intercepted North Vietnamese radio traffic indicated the base commander and his staff had been killed. Supply reserves representing 3 months of operations had been destroyed, and the facility would require complete reconstruction. This single mission demonstrated that AC-130 gunships had evolved beyond truck hunting to become strategic weapons capable of eliminating major enemy installations. But success came with costs that statistics couldn't capture. Crew fatigue became a significant concern as pilots, sensor operators, and gunners flew demanding missions night after night with minimal rest. The psychological stress of sustained combat operations, combined with the physical challenges of managing complex systems during extended flights, created burnout that threatened operational effectiveness. Technical Sergeant Robert Martinez, a veteran sensor operator with over 200 combat missions, described the mental challenge. You're staring at infrared screens for 6 hours straight, trying to distinguish enemy trucks from water buffalo, identifying weapons positions that want to kill you, calling aim points while the aircraft banks and the cannons shake the entire fuselage. After months of this, you start seeing targets in your sleep. The squadron implemented mandatory crew rotation policies to address fatigue concerns, but persistent shortages of qualified personnel meant individuals often flew more frequently than recommended guidelines allowed.
Spectre crews understood the stakes. Every mission they flew potentially saved American lives by interdicting enemy supplies or providing close air support. This sense of purpose drove them beyond normal operational limits. By August 1969, AC-130 gunships had destroyed over 2,000 trucks, eliminated hundreds of structures, and supported countless ground operations throughout Southeast Asia. These achievements came at the cost of 2 aircraft lost to enemy fire and numerous incidents where gunships returned to base with battle damage. The Pentagon's predictions about vulnerability had proven partially correct, but the aircraft's combat effectiveness more than justified the risks. North Vietnamese forces adapted continuously to counter the gunship threat. Anti-aircraft positions received better camouflage and dispersal to avoid detection by infrared sensors. Dummy convoys created false targets designed to expose gunships to ambush by hidden air defense weapons. Some trucks began carrying SA-7 shoulder-fired missiles, turning supply vehicles into mobile anti-aircraft platforms. These countermeasures forced AC-130 crews to develop increasingly sophisticated tactics. Electronic warfare officers learned to identify the electronic signatures of different air defense systems, allowing preemptive evasion or suppression. Sensor operators perfected techniques for distinguishing real targets from decoys using multiple sensor modes in combination. Fire control specialists developed rapid engagement procedures that minimized aircraft exposure during attacks. The tactical evolution transformed Spectre operations from straightforward interdiction to complex engagements requiring split-second decision-making and precise execution. Crews who mastered these advanced techniques achieved extraordinary results while minimizing their vulnerability. Those who failed to adapt didn't survive long in the unforgiving environment over the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
The final years of American involvement in Vietnam proved both the AC-130's ultimate validation and its continuing controversy. By 1972, Spectre gunships had destroyed over 10,000 trucks, 1,000 structures, and countless other targets throughout Southeast Asia. These statistics represented unprecedented success for a weapons system that senior military leaders had initially dismissed as tactically unsound and strategically unnecessary. Colonel Joseph Hicks, now commanding the 16th Special Operations Squadron, found himself testifying before congressional committees investigating defense procurement decisions and weapons system effectiveness. The hearings focused on cost-benefit analysis of various Vietnam-era programs, with particular scrutiny of specialized aircraft like the AC-130 that had been developed outside normal acquisition processes. Hicks presented operational data that painted an irrefutable picture of gunship effectiveness. Each AC-130 sortie destroyed an average of 7.3 enemy trucks, at a cost of approximately $45,000, including fuel, ammunition, maintenance, and crew salaries. By comparison, fast-mover strikes eliminated an average of 1.2 trucks per sortie, at costs exceeding $80,000. The gunship's sustained loiter capability and precision sensors made it exponentially more cost-effective than conventional air interdiction. More significantly, Hicks emphasized the strategic impact that raw statistics couldn't fully capture. North Vietnamese logistics operations had been fundamentally disrupted by AC-130 operations, forcing enemy forces to adopt inefficient transportation methods that consumed resources and limited operational capability. The psychological effect of gunship attacks had created fear among truck drivers and convoy commanders that no amount of air defense investment could eliminate. Congressional skeptics questioned whether an aircraft designed for a specific conflict would have value after Vietnam concluded. Hicks's response proved prescient. Spectre isn't just a truck killer. It's an integrated sensor and weapons platform capable of precision fire support in any environment where you need sustained, accurate firepower. That requirement won't disappear when this war ends. Events proved the colonel correct, as AC-130 operations expanded beyond Vietnam to include missions throughout Southeast Asia. Gunships supported operations in Laos and Cambodia, conducted psychological warfare missions, and provided close air support for special operations forces engaged in sensitive missions. The aircraft's versatility exceeded its original design parameters, demonstrating capabilities its creators hadn't fully anticipated. The final AC-130 loss to enemy fire occurred on March 28, 1972, when Spectre 17 was shot down over the Plain of Jars in Laos. A SA-2 surface-to-air missile struck the aircraft during what should have been a routine interdiction mission, killing all 14 crew members aboard. The tragedy emphasized that gunship operations remained inherently dangerous, despite improvements in defensive systems and tactics. But this single loss couldn't overshadow the program's overall success. 6 AC-130 aircraft destroyed during 5 years of intensive combat operations represented an extraordinarily low loss rate for missions that consistently exposed crews to enemy fire. By comparison, fast-mover squadrons experienced losses exceeding 10% of assigned aircraft during equivalent periods. The gunship's supposed vulnerability had proven less catastrophic than critics predicted. The last American AC-130 departed Southeast Asia in October 1972 as ground combat operations wound down and air support requirements diminished. The aircraft returned to bases in the United States, where they would be maintained in reserve status, available for deployment if future conflicts required their specialized capabilities. Many analysts assumed Spectre's combat career had concluded with Vietnam's end. Instead, the AC-130 gunship became a permanent fixture of American military operations for the next 50 years. The aircraft participated in Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada, Operation Just Cause in Panama, both Gulf Wars, operations in Somalia, Bosnia, and Afghanistan, and countless classified missions that remain undisclosed. Each conflict validated the original assessment that precision, sustained firepower delivered from orbiting platforms filled crucial capability gaps. Modern AC-130J Ghost Rider gunships bear little resemblance to their Vietnam-era ancestors. Sophisticated precision-guided munitions, advanced sensors capable of detecting individual humans from 20 miles away, and integrated command and control systems transform the aircraft into information nodes as much as weapons platforms. Yet the fundamental concept remains unchanged. Orbit targets, identify threats precisely, and deliver overwhelming firepower with surgical accuracy. The Pentagon analysts who dismissed the AC-130 as obsolete before it flew its first mission had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of modern warfare. Victory doesn't always belong to the fastest or most technologically advanced weapons system. Sometimes it belongs to the platform that can loiter over battlefields for hours, distinguish friends from enemies in total darkness, and deliver firepower with precision that minimizes collateral damage while maximizing effectiveness. Spectre's legacy extends beyond kill statistics and operational success to encompass doctrinal changes in how militaries approach close air support and precision strike missions. The concept of orbiting weapons platforms providing sustained fire support has influenced everything from armed drones to helicopter gunships to next-generation unmanned combat systems. The useless experiment that senior officers wanted to cancel became one of the most successful weapons platforms in American military history, proving that sometimes the ideas everyone dismisses are exactly what change warfare forever. Because in the end, it's not about speed or stealth or conventional metrics. It's about being in the right place with the right weapons when the mission demands results. And for 55 years, nobody's done that better than Spectre.